We're going to create a brush from some artwork that we create that can be applied to the inlay around the sound hole of the guitar. And we'll take a look at some other brushes that we can use as well. Now, Illustrator gives us the ability to create calligraphic, scatter, art, bristle, and pattern brushes. Now, to get your feet wet with using brushes, one of the ways you can do this is by coming up here to the brush panel. And down here at the bottom, you can click on the Brush Libraries menu, which gives you a multitude of categories that you can use for discovering different brushes. So for example, if I go into, say, let's go with decorative, and I'm going to choose decorative banners and seals, okay? And you'll notice that within this, you can see that these are the different brushes that we can use in our artwork. So let's say we wanted to use this one here. When I click on it, it adds it to my brushes panel. Now, there's a couple ways you can utilize a brush. One way is to, say, draw a line. I'll use the line tool. And if I click on that brush, it's going to apply that brush to my path. Now, it doesn't have to be a straight line either. You can use your pen tool to draw some interesting shape, and when you apply that brush, it'll apply that brush to the object. So it's a really powerful tool that you can use, and if you increase the stroke weight, then of course the brush in turn gets bigger. So it's really, really powerful. There's a couple of default ones in here, but in the library you can really experiment with these. You can see there's one called Vector Packs, and there's one called Grunge Brushes Vector Pack. And this gives you some really cool, like, grungy brushes. You know, if I choose, say, this one, now when I use my brush tool, you can use my paintbrush tool, or we can use a regular path tool. Now as I draw with this brush, it's drawing using, you know, that artwork. Same thing if I make this one the active brush and I draw, it's going to draw that artwork. So you can use either the paintbrush tool or any path to create your brushes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create our own brush. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little bit of artwork here. So what I'll do is I'm going to zoom in to my artwork, and I'm going to start by just drawing a line, a vertical line, and we can fill it with the brown color. That's fine. Maybe I'll make this a little bit thicker. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an ellipse. And essentially what you want to do is just draw the artwork the way you want it to appear. So I'm going to fill this with that color. I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to Option or Alt click on the top anchor point and the bottom anchor point. Now I'll select that with my selection tool, and I'm just going to drag one of the left or right handles to make that narrower. I'm going to rotate it a little bit, and then I'll kind of position that like so. And let's make a copy of that, and then I'll use my reflect tool, and I'm just going to click here and then shift click down here to flip it on the vertical axis. Now I'm going to select all of these objects, and I'm going to click on one of them to make them the key object. And in the Align panel, I'm going to set the horizontal spacing to 0. That way they're all, you know, bumped up next to one another. And then let's go ahead and align them to one another as well. So that looks pretty good. So that's essentially the artwork that I want to create. And if you wanted to get creative, we could come up here and we could, you know, make one of these colors lighter. And then maybe what I can do is duplicate that, and then I could make, I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll go ahead and flip this. So I'll go ahead and double click on this, and I'm going to flip this on the vertical axis. Just go ahead and click OK, and now we have one that's kind of alternating. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shrink this stem a little bit, and I don't need this much at the bottom. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to select all of this, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And then I'm going to open up my brushes panel. And to create a brush, all you have to do is take your artwork and drag it and drop it into the brushes panel. And it's going to ask you what kind of brush you want to create. And so a calligraphic brush is You know, as you write calligraphy, you can create that. A scatter brush is going to scatter the art across the path. The art brush is going to stretch the art along a path. The bristle brush is actually not created using artwork. It's created, it represents like kind of like natural media brushes. I'm going to create a pattern brush, which is going to repeat this artwork along a path. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now when you do this, it gives you some options here. You can specify how this looks along a straight segment, an outside corner, an inside corner, and then the end and the beginning. Now this is a pretty basic brush, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the corner to none because I really don't want it to do anything at this point. And I'm going to make sure that I'm using this artwork for the side tile. I'm going to go ahead and call this, I'll just call this Inlay, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And what this has done now is it's added this brush down here at the bottom. Now to utilize that brush, what we can do is I'm going to grab the sound hole for the guitar, and using my scale tool, I'm just going to kind of click out here and drag outward while holding down the Shift and the Option or Alt key. And then I'm going to swap the stroke and fill color. And then what I'm going to do is in my brushes panel, I'm going to click on this brush to apply it to the path. Now this artwork is a lot bigger than what I want, so I'm going to reduce this to like 0.1 points, and now you can see what that inlay looks like applied to that artwork. Maybe that's a little smaller than what I want. Let's go with like 0.3, and now you can see that artwork as it appears around there. Now, if you decide at some point, like right now my stroke color is brown, but if I choose a different color, this particular type of brush is not going to change color because it's a pattern brush. Now, that doesn't mean we can't modify it after the fact. If you open up the brush panel, you can always drag this and drop it out here, and that'll give you the artwork that you're trying to modify. And what I can also do is I can change the color of these if I wish. Like maybe if I want this to stand out a little bit more, let's go with say like a really light version of that color, or maybe even like, I don't know, maybe white would look okay. Let's change the focus to the fill, and let's try that. And so with that selected, and maybe what I'll do is bring this forward, bring to front, there we go. And so I'll grab this again, and what I can do is as I drag this in, if I hold down my Option or Alt key, I can replace the tile in that brush. And so now it's actually going to update this brush with the new artwork. So when I click OK, that's going to apply. Now, if I did want the color to change, I can adjust the colorization method here. So maybe what I want to do is change this to say tints and shades, and you can also define a different key color for the artwork. Now in my example, I want to keep this artwork as is, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave this set to none, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And because I modified this, I'm going to tell it to apply it to existing strokes, and now the artwork you can see has been updated on the guitar. So there's a lot of great things that you can do with your brushes. I'm going to delete this artwork because I don't need it. I want you to remember that utilizing the different brushes gives you a lot of flexibility regarding what type of artwork you can create in Illustrator.